All right, we're now on the fourth paragraph of this beautiful and deep and practical mamar. It's closed in LIkuti Torah, which was written by the first Rebbe of Chabad. Began the Chabad movement of bringing Moshiach actually, physically, in this world, changing the whole world with Chassidut. According to the Chabad tradition, the Moshiach will only come through teaching, knowledge. The originator of the Hasidic movement, called the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem, as one Rosh Hashanah, when he was like 20-something years old, as he had an experience that his soul, he writes that his soul, his consciousness, whatever, left his body, in any case, went to the higher realms of heaven, and he went to the what's called the chamber of the Mashiach, and he saw the Mashiach, and he asked him, when are you going to come to save the Jewish people? You know, we've been waiting for so long. We've filled all the, we've suffered already. We've held on to Judaism through hell and fire and the worst possible things. What do we have to do more for you to come and save not just us, but the whole world? So they asked him a question, which is a question that was asked to the Mashiach by Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, like 1,500 years earlier. And the Mashiach said, it's a sentence from Mishlei, when your teachings are spread out to the furthest spiritual and physical places, in other words, to the deepest and most confused Jews and to the corners of the earth, when your teachings are spread out. And those teachings are what we're learning. That's the teachings of Chassidut, and that bring the ideas of what God is and what God wants and how to accomplish this into the world. So that's what Chassidut is. That's what we're learning. So it's Chassidut. These teachings are called Chassidut. And there's different groups of Chassidim that have their own way of understanding what the Baal Shem Tov wanted. The most notable of them with teachings are Breslev and Chabad. And Breslev and Chabad, they have totally different goals in their Chassidut, but nevertheless, it is Chassidut. Definitely, it is definitely the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. And so, but this is Chassidut, good. The Breslev is more to, to fix up a person, that the person himself should be enthusiastic. And purpose of God is that, the purpose of Chassidut is that we should fix up the whole world. And fixing up yourself is just a means to bring Mashiach and fixing up the whole entire world, that everyone will know and understand God. So here we go. So we said there's a different, one of the essential aspects of Judaism is love, loving God. And there's two different types of love. One of them is Avraham and Aaron. Avraham brings your consciousness from below to above, striving to get closer to God. And Aaron's thing is striving to bring God into the world. And that's accomplished by a different type of love, if you want to call it, a different type of relationship. And that is true, you love God, but you're bitter because you're doing what you can, and Mashiach is not here. God is not revealed. God is not sufficiently revealed in the world. The world is full of ignorance and trouble and problems and war and anxiety, etc. And it's not our fault. It's because God is not revealed here. So nothing man can do is going to fix this up. There has to be, when God is revealed in the world, and people start to think differently. They're calmer, they're more positive. So that says, that's the aspect of bitterness. Bitterness, and that's what the Rebbe wants to say over here. That's the whole idea of the menorah that Aaron lit. He lit The menorah was made from gold. The gold is usually this aspect of bitterness, fear of God. Because we have to make a change in the world. And we can't make it. All we can do is make a vessel, and God makes the changes. So we want to make the vessel. What's the vessel? Is, in this case, it's bitterness. Now, it's not that your whole life you're just walking around with a frown on, you don't talk to anybody, and people say good morning, and you say, drop dead or something, you're all bitter, because that's not what it means. Bitter means, it says, marmer who ma'od, is bitter only because there's not godliness here, and he knows that it's because of me, not because of the other person. The reason godliness is not here is because of me. The reason the other people are not doing what they're supposed to do is because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. In other words, you can't control the people, but you can control yourself. So not doing, if you're angry at other people, so for sure you should be angry at yourself, because they're not even in your control if they're not acting properly. So it's out of your control. What good is you getting angry at them going to do? But even more, the whole world depends on you. So therefore, a person should, therefore, a person looks at himself and he realizes that all the darkness and all the problems in the world are due to one person. Who is that person? Me. And everyone says that to himself. So that's why in Shmon Esrei we say, Salach Lanu, forgive us, because before Shmon Esrei we think we're okay. Before we get to the Amida prayer, we think that we're 100% okay. When you get to the Shmon Esrei prayer, then you've already gotten to this level of loving God, etc., like Abraham. And you come to Shmona Esrei, then you're asking God to fix up the world. And one of the things you realize is the reason that the world is not fixed up is because of me. Because of me, because I'm always looking at other people and I think I'm better than everybody else, or I think that I've got nothing more to fix up. So it says, how do we fix this up? Only one way, by revealing light, right? Everybody's walking around in a room that's dark and they're bumping into each other and they're all getting angry at each other and screaming at each other. And then one guy screams at the other one and the other person screams back. It's bad enough that it's dark. And now you're screaming also, and I'm screaming. You're the one that's screaming. Everybody's just going crazy because the lights are out. And as soon as you turn the lights on, then all of a sudden everything becomes clear. So that's the whole idea. Who's going to find the lights? And I'm doing everything that I can. And in our case, we're talking about finding the lights means a person just getting himself in tune with what God wants him to do, say, think, and feel. So this is bitterness. This thing of bitterness, that you're bitter because the world is not the way, doesn't mean that that you're always miserable. It means down deep, way down deep inside of your personality, the main motivating factor inside of your personality is the world is not the way it's supposed to be. It can't remain this way. Things have to change. I have to change. My attitude has to change. It's all up to me to do. And this thing of looking at other people and thinking it's other people's faults, that increases the problem. That because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So all of a sudden a person realizes that, well, what am I doing? He becomes very bitter. One of the things you have to do that's lacking is that you have to serve God with happiness. You have to be pleasant. So this bitterness will bring you to being pleasant and etc. But the basic underlying principle is we have to find a solution. And the solution is me. I have to get myself together and fix up the world and do what I can. And a person could say, Jews have been doing this and saying this for thousands of years and it hasn't helped. Says, good, okay, that's the problem. Why look at what happened in the past in a negative way? Say, think Jews have been doing this for thousands of years and it hasn't helped, but I am going to help, right? One of the reasons it hasn't helped is because they've been saying Jews have been doing this for hundreds of years and then tens of years and then 1 year, it didn't work, and a couple of hours and it hasn't worked. So in other words, to look at the situation as desperate and as dark as it is, and that should make us more, how do you say, inspired to do something about it. Similarly, this is the aspect of Aaron. Also, King David said the same thing. It said, my tears were like bread for me. I ate tears. A person, when he's very sad, doesn't want to eat. It says King David, he said, I was eating tears. Tears were my mainstay. What was my tears? What was I crying about? That everybody said, Ayeh Elokecha. It's from one of the Psalms. Everyone's saying, where is your God? Jews, where's your God? It's the same thing. You can say, where's the God? Here you have the Holocaust. That's what you guys get for being religious. You get Holocaust and destructions and where's your God? What's wrong? So what's the answer? The answer is there's one person to blame for this whole thing, and that person is me. You don't even have to tell other people about it. That I have to start making a light. I should not let the world get me down. But it gets me down. What am I supposed to do? It says King David says, that's why he said the tears were my food day and night. I'm not doing as much as I can. Now, King David said he didn't used to even sleep. King David, he said he used to sleep like 20 minutes or something a night, and then he used to wake up and pray and learn and sing. This motivated him. How it is that by means of this bitterness, there can be drawn on this tremendous love of Aaron. Once in a while, you read in the news. I don't even know if these things really happen, but you read some old grandmother goes out and lifts up a car to save her grandson. Right, her grandson is playing in the backyard, and somehow or other there was a car on a blocks or on a jack or something, and it fell down on her grandson. Heard the grandson scream, and she runs outside. She weighs 90 pounds, and she picks up, this big truck or something, a car that weighs 1,000 pounds or 2,000 pounds. She lifts it up so that her grandson can crawl out. There's stories like that, superhuman powers that are revealed inside of people, and because the situation is desperate. Well, the situation is desperate, and it all depends on us to reveal our inner powers. We don't know who we are. It says only by means of this bitterness, right? I got to change the situation. Can we come to this level of this big love of our own? Liot ayin ba'ayin, so that God will appear to us eye to eye. It's nothing like we've ever experienced, nothing like I've ever experienced for sure, except in Mount Sinai. In Mount Sinai, that's what it was. And to a certain degree, when the Jews would go to the Holy Temple, they would feel they're being created, they would feel their Creator. He calls all this, this is only a preparation. This is all to understand how Aaron lit the candles from oil. Because what is oil? Oil comes by means of crushing the olives. And just like in oil comes from kotim, first of all, you have to crush, first of all, katit lamaor, like it says, crushing up the olives. Begam asui, and it is also made mizetim, from olives, and olives are very bitter. Did you know that olives are bitter? Not the olives you buy from the store. Not the olives, but I have in my house over here, I have a couple of olive trees. So I never really exactly knew what to do with olives. And frankly, I don't really like olives that much, but the trees are beautiful. Oh, olive trees, maybe one of the most beautiful trees that there are. The tree itself, but doesn't have any flowers or anything, but it has trees, and then it grows these olives on it. The olives are not also anything spectacular, but the tree itself, it's all the trunk is winding and the branches and everything. Very good. In Hebron, there's a lot of these. Anyway, so one day I decided, somebody came to my house and said, hey, you got all these olives, you using them? I said, no, you can use them. So he took the olives and I said, what do you do with them? He makes olives, right? So I figured, well, I guess I'll do the same thing. So I took off one of the olives from the tree, and I made sure it was a little bit soft or something so I could eat it. And I ate it. It's terrible. It's just terrible. So I figured maybe it wasn't soft enough. It's just bitter. Not all the way through, it's soft. So I figured, what are these people? I've eaten olives before. They don't taste like that. It says, no, you have to put them into salt. You have to make a whole process. You have to leave them in salt for a few days. Anyway, he told me it didn't really interest me how to make them, because I'm not that interested. But the fact of the matter is olives, that's what I wanted to get. Olives are bitter. And the way that you get olive oil is by means of crushing the oil. So it's two, if you want to say, negative processes, two negative facts. Olives themselves are bitter. And in order to get the oil out of them, you have to crush them. And that's why oil, after you do these processes, you find bitter olives and you crush them, you get this oil. Behold, hadlaka, this lighting of the menorah of Hamshachas Ha'ava, and drawing down this love, which Aaron did. Aaron did not light the lamps in the holy temple because it was just a meaningless job. I mean, where was this lamp in the holy temple? It was inside of a room. Nobody even saw it. Who saw it? The Kohanim. Only Kohanim could go into that room where the lamp, where the menorah was. And it says even more that it was slanted toward the middle, so it didn't shine out light. It didn't need light. It says the holy temple was light in itself. And in any case, the purpose why you lit these candles was in order to draw down love to the Jewish people. Love of God, love of life, love of reality to the Jewish people. Karosh Peish, therefore he drew down, this is drawing down this, he lit it up, it's fire. It's fire that comes from olives that are crushed up from bitterness. You have to have this bitter crushing of yourself, and that draws down this love like flaming fire. Habam, which comes from Ria, which comes from this seeing. And it's that you want godliness. This is by means of crushing yourself. So it says you want to have this tremendous love of God, as you have to be able to see God. You can't love something you don't see. That's pretty hard. You have to, you can pretend, right? Like a Shakespearean play, one of these actors, right? The actors, the movie industry, whatever, these people are fantastic actors, and their whole thing is a big bluff. They're pretending they're afraid, and they're pretending that they're angry, and they're pretending that they're in danger, and they're pretending that they're this. It's all pretending. They can pretend, that they love this as their children. Their son got killed, and it wasn't their son. It was an actor, and he didn't get killed. He's still alive, and he got paid good also, right, for doing this. So everybody's really behind them, but the crowd is crying. Why the crowd? Because everybody's acting, but it's not really real. In order to have something real, it has to be, there's such a thing as reality. People do really have children, and they do really have love. They really love. The more real a thing is, and the more valuable it is, and the more that it's yours, is the more love and value that you have of it. So that's the idea of Aaron, is that people will love God, the Creator. How you can't love God if you don't have any feeling and seeing of what He is, right? We're not talking about just acting and pretending. So it says, first of all, acting and pretending you love God is a little bit different than pretending, that Romeo loves Juliet or something like that. Because that's really just made up. And even if it was true, it's just a mundane thing. Okay, it's very nice, they're very nice, a husband loves a wife, and that's good, but still it's mundane. It's nothing compared to the love of God. God creates to help the husband and the wife and the children and the home. He creates everything. So to feel the godliness, and God is also constant, He's always creating us. So to feel this is it's a different type of a love. And here we're talking about loving God, not just because He creates us, because there's much deeper. He creates us for a purpose. We'll see. But in order to have this, a person has to first of all crush himself. God made us purposely that we are egotistical. That's the way people are. And being egotistical is not necessarily bad, but it can be very bad, right? I mean, egotistical, if you want to call it, God commands us. He wants me to do the command. So He wants there to be a me. He wants me to be happy serving Him. So you can't be happy unless you're an ego. You can't love God unless there's someone who's loving God. So it says that's the whole idea of hitbonenut. You have to think, how do you come to this bitterness? By means of thinking deeply. Hashiflut shel nefesh, how low the soul has come down. Ech yorda min makom gavua, how the soul has come down from a high place. Ve'ech hamakom v'hazaman hem rachokim me'od mi or panav, from God's face, Yisbarech. How real God is and how unreal this world is, and how I am convinced that this world is all there is. And I'm stuck in this unreality. Begam also by means of this yitmarmer ala hepech and and you'll be very bitter when you think about how good God is and how far away I am. The explanation is like this. The hine kasiv, it says kashem. Now we're going to see how the Torah comes into this. That's the whole idea of the Torah. Because let's be frank, I mean, not everybody's going to come to these levels of realization and deep contemplation, etc. What the Rebbe is trying to tell us over here is what reality really is. What is really reality? How incredibly valuable this physical world is that God creates. But we only can really appreciate it when going to heaven. That's why it says a person dies, he goes to heaven, but then he can't do anything with his appreciation. Because the whole purpose is supposed to be to realize how great God is in this world. That's why God wants the holy temple to be here. So how do we do that? We have to wait until we die, and then you go to heaven, and who knows if you're going to go to heaven? Right? What's going to happen then? So what are we supposed? So the Rebbe says now is the chance, and the Rebbe is going to explain us how to do it because he happens to be one of these people that does feel godliness in the world. The Rebbes of Chabad were the Moshiach of their generation, each and every one of them. That's the job of Moshiach, that everyone should just feel how precious this physical world is, that God is creating it, and how they're part of this physical world, how important they are to God, non-Jew as well. But it's the Jews, the job of the Jews is to reveal this. The Inyan is like this. The Hine Kasiv, it is written, Kashem and Atov al Rosh, Yored al Zakan Aaron. This is one of the what's called Shir HaMalos, right near the end of the Shir HaMalos. What is it? The Psalm number 133. Look it up. Zman Zaken Aaron, Shir 34. Zaken Aaron 134. She Yored al Pi Midotov. Like it says, this is the good oil on the head, which King David, this is King David's godly poetry. Like the good oil. This is Hine Matov Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. How good it is, friends, sitting together. Kesheman Hatov, like the good oil, ala rosh, on the head. Yored ala zakan, it comes down on the beard. Zakan Aaron, the beard of Aaron. She yored al pi mirotov, and it comes down on his garments. What's this talking about? It's good friends sitting together, like good oil on the head that comes down to the beard of Aaron that comes on his. It's called this oil comes on his head, to his beard, to his garments. What's this talking about? King David obviously is talking about God, but what's it talking about here? Perush, Zaken Aaron. What is the beard of Aaron? This is what's called Dikna de Kahuna Rabbah. This is called the beard of the high priest. What is this beard of the high priest? This is in general the 13 Tikkune Dikna, the 13 tufts of the beard, the 13 attributes of mercy, which this is the Yud Gimel Midas Arachim, the 13 attributes of mercy of God, Yud Gimel Midas Shator and Nidreshes Bem, and these are also the 13 methods by which the Torah can be, extrapolated, learned. Because the Torah was given in a concealed way, right? So we have to learn this commandment to learn the Torah, to understand what's hidden in the Torah. There's 13 principles of learning. We say it every day in any case, what's going on over here? Here's this oil that comes down on the head, on the beard, on the garments of Aaron. Aaron is this tremendous love. The beard is the 13 attributes of mercy, right? It says by the vision of what is Ezekiel and by Isaiah, it says that he saw God sitting on this throne, and there was a beard by also Daniel. Bechinas Sa'arot. This is the hairs. Shehein halachot the Torah. Okay, so what is this beard of God? Beard of God, the 13 attributes of mercy. This is also the 13 ways that the Torah is learned. That's what the Torah is. The beard of God, these hairs on the beard, these are the laws of the Torah. Shenikra katsavatov tiltolim. They're called, this is in the Song of Songs, it's called that his the hairs of the, what is his locks of his hairs are, how do you say, curled. She'ein ein amshachas gilui elokusa. This is revelation of God, milamayla lamata, from above to below. 1 second. 1 second. People think that this person is the one who's been speaking here. There we go. These are the laws of the Torah which come down from above to below. But ribo yischalkos, in many, how do you say, distributed. The laws, they are divided, subdivided, la'en kates, without any end. V'yesh al bechinas zeh bechinas shemen, and that's what the oil comes down. So what is this beard of Aaron? The beard of Aaron are the 13 attributes of mercy which come down into this world. The beard of Aaron, 13 attributes of mercy which come down into this world. Each and every strand is another one of the halachas of the Torah, laws of the Torah. And on these you have to pour this oil. This oil, this is the level of Chachmei Eloah, God's upper wisdom. Chachma is another word for life. This is the upper life force of God, which is drawn down to them. Here is a nice long footnote that I don't know where this footnote ends. And so I don't know if it does end. So we don't have any recourse but to do the whole thing. Where is this? These are usually written by the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad, the grandson. Okay, I guess we'll do it. Here we go. Ready? The explanation is, Yesh Lomar, we can say like this. These hairs, this is Zer Anpin. These are the emotions of God. It says the commandments are the emotions of God. It says it also in the 4th chapter of the Tanya, because the commandments are the positive commandments. That's God's kindness, His love, and then the prohibitions, that comes from God's gevurah, His power. So that comes from Zer Anpin. That means the small faces. That's called God's emotions. Ksavotov Teltalim, that what it says, that his locks are curly. The locks of the hair. Shakavana, this also refers to the hairs which come down from the 13 tufts of the beard of Erech Anpin. It's a Kabbalistic level for what's called the outside level of God's crown. Like it says, Zaken Zakan Aaron. Like it says 2 times. The beard of Aaron. It's mentioned 2 times, Zaken, because these beards have a hollow inside of them. The hairs are alive, right? So there's inside of the hair, there's life force which comes into the hair inside. Shabo nimshach mislabesh ezechayus. From this comes the life force from the brain. That's what the hairs are. There's different types of hairs. There's hairs on the head and hairs on the beard. The hairs on the beard, they come down. Hine asarot atzma, the beard themselves, that comes from what's called the brains, the extra brain, extra intellect. Therefore, you can cut the hairs and you don't feel anything to the brain, because it's a very, very contracted level of intellect. That's why the hairs, we're talking about the hairs on the head. And this is understood spiritually. What the hairs are called garments, like it says, Al Yadei Masigim a Nimshal Asher, like a mushal. A mushal, by means of a mushal, you can see of the Nimshal. What's a mushal? A garment. What's a garment? A garment means let's say an astronaut, a deep sea diver, right? They have to put on garments in order to go into the water, to go into outer space. Same thing, a person, he wants to go into the street, he has to put on garments. Garments are things that make a person more, how do you say, presentable, or that he can relate to his surrounding, right? The deep sea diver, or what he has to put on these garments. The astronaut, the fireman, they have to put on garments. The garments enable you to adapt to the situation. Well, the same thing is also ideas. You have a deep idea, I remember there was a movie that was made by Walt Disney of Einstein's theory of relativity. Einstein had this amazing ability to explain his ideas down to the most simple levels, because he felt he was just talking about reality. So we put it into all these different. A man is on a train, and which one is moving? That's called a mashal. A mashal is like a parable or an example that you give to explain something. Like, so a little child, he wants to know, you're explaining to him 2 and 2 is 4. He has no idea what you're talking about. So you take 2 apples and you give it to one child. You give 2 other apples and you give it to another child. And then you say, put them together. How many are there now? I don't know. It says there's 4. So the kid says, does this work with bananas also? Because I don't like apples. So, well, let's try it. You have 2 apples, 2 bananas. You have 2 bananas. You put it together. How many are there? There's 4 bananas. What if this person has 2 bananas? This person has 2 apples. You put it together, then what happens? Oh, I don't know. It says, well, you have 4 fruits, 4 things. But then now the number 4 becomes, now what if you have, let's make numbers, 4 number ones. How many have you have 4? 4 what's? 4 numbers. So all of a sudden, he puts this idea of mathematics into garments so that he can explain it. Right? And same thing as, let's say, you have parables. Right? You have parables. You tell a story about something, and it comes out that says, and the same thing is with us. We also have to be kind to our fellow man. Right? Tell some long story about how honest George Washington was, or how brave President Kennedy was, or something. And just as they did, so you have to do it also. This is an example for honesty and for bravery. That's called a mashal. A mashal. So it says that's the whole idea of the Torah. The Torah is what's called a mashal for God. It's a garment. And that, he says, is something like the hairs. Hairs says that's just a mashal. It's really awareness. The hairs come from the brain. That's what it says according to Kabbalah. It's a very, very contracted and small amount of brain intelligence, right? That it comes down to the point where you can cut it and you don't feel anything. You don't cut any awareness. But that, nevertheless, that's what the beard is. So he says that's the same thing. There exists similarly as the Torah. The Torah is like these hairs, because the Torah is called Mashal HaKadmoni. The Torah is called the parable for God. Perashuhu b'chinas mashal v'lavush leb'chinas kadmon shel olam. The Torah is a garment for the essence of God. Just like you have a parable. By means of this, you can understand something much deeper, right? Because you took these the apples or bananas, and you were able to understand from this mathematics. Is kach also by means of the Torah, you'll have a little bit of an idea what the essence of God is. Shu kadmona shel olam. So of course you can look at, the Torah, and you can say it's just another book in the library. But that's like the child saying, what is mathematics? Mathematics is pears and bananas. I don't like, apples and bananas. I don't even like apples and bananas. I don't know what they're talking. That's what you go to university for, apples and bananas. You don't understand what's the point. The point of the parable. The point of the parable. So that's the same thing with the Torah. The Torah itself is holy, but what's the holiness of the Torah? Not just the letters, and not even just the ideas, but the godliness which is inside of these ideas, that makes the Torah itself holy. In other words, it's not the same thing as the bananas and the apples. Bananas and apples are not mathematics, but the Torah is godliness. But you can look at it at face value, and you don't see any godliness at all. It's just like we said, another book. V'zeu shalahevet a Torah. This is what's called. Sheh halachos a Torah. This is what the laws of the Torah. They are the hairs themselves. In other words, what does it mean that they're called mashal hakadmoni? The laws of the Torah, all of them are like an example of pure godliness. This also shows us how we don't understand what God is. But you want to tell me that that's what you Jewish people believe, that God is this boxes you put on your head? That's what God is, right? God is, not lighting a fire on Sabbath. That's God. What are you talking about? He says, no. That's God's will. is God's will, but there's godliness inside of it. From this, you have to want to call it extrapolate and think, right, about God. What are you supposed to think? Number one, you're supposed to think about God is creating the world. That's pretty amazing, right? That's pretty amazing. But the Torah, one second. God is creating the world for a purpose. If it wasn't for this purpose, the purpose is more valuable than the thing. You have a store, you have a big department store, right? It's all complex and there's all different levels and departments. And there's this, the whole reason for this department store is what? Only one, either you should make money or that you should provide the needs of the people, right? Provides the needs of the people. You won't need department stores anymore. You won't have to have money and give everybody what they want. Everybody, that was a communist ideal. Of course, it's right. It was ridiculously simple, right? Impractically simple. But the fact of the matter is that that's, the purpose of the thing is the cause of the thing. The same thing. The world is amazing, right? Well, the cause of the world is a purpose of the world. That's the idea of the Torah. The Torah is that we're putting on tefillin, we're keeping the Shabbat to show that the world has a purpose to it. These are little signs, like little sort of, how do you call it? The traffic sign, road signs, that there's a purpose to the world. Look in this direction. That's the idea of the Shem and Atov. That's the idea of this good oil. And this is the God's wisdom, the life force with or Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamash, from the Kadmon Shel Olam, from God himself. This is what flows down on the beard, on these hairs, which are the Torah of mitzvahs. This is what's called Chachma the Adam Kadmon, or Chachma of Atik Yomin, which is drawn down into the Torah and the commandments. That's the whole idea of these hairs, which are called the 13 attributes of the 13 attributes of the beard of Erech Anpin, of the ancient one, of the ancient one of Erech Anpin, of the long faces, the patient one. This is what's called the external aspect of God's will. Keter. And this is what the God's will. This itself is only the outside. The inside is the oil atov. This comes from the essence of God, higher than God's will even. That God has a will, right? We can say, okay, there's the world. The world is amazing. Torah and the commandments, that's God's will, right? That's even more amazing. It seems that's a very sort of unimpressive part of the world, like the hairs, right? It's not really a very impressive part of the human being, right? That's not a very live. A person loses his hair, he's still alive, doesn't hurt him at all. And the same thing with the Torah of mitzvahs. You might think, take it or leave, there's no big problem. But the fact is, the Torah of mitzvahs hint at that there's a reason for the world. It says, well, that fact that there's a reason for the world, that also hints also at something, and what the essence of God. That's what Pnimiyut Keter. But it's impossible to draw down all this. You have to have the external. Now, that the oil comes out from the olives, and the olives, they are bitter. What's the point? The point is you want to really reveal all this hidden godliness and purpose, which is in Torah and mitzvahs. Well, you have to be bitter. What does it mean you have to be bitter? The underlying thing is, I want godliness to be in the world. The world is making too much trouble for me. And what's the world? The world is me. Me, I'm the problem. Because these olives, this is the level of tzomech. That's the level of vegetation, vegetable. And in sorrow, this is like the hairs themselves of the 13 attributes of mercy. This is what's called tzomech. Therefore, the Torah and the commandments, that's like the hairs, right? The hairs, that's like the olives. They're very bitter. Kikain asarot atzmam are called dinim, because these are what's called dinim, severities. The laws of the Torah are very, very severe. Lagabi pinimius, regarding to the outside, right? What do people say? Who needs Judaism? There was one person that I saw even said, Judaism is not a religion. You have to realize it's not a religion. It's just for godliness. And one of the biggest mistakes, Judaism, God is nice. He likes everybody. He's not a strict God. No reward, no punishment. Come on, let's make Judaism user-friendly. Well, this is a big lie. This is a big lie. This is not true at all. God is very, very, very severe. The Torah and the commandments have to be very, very exact. But only through that can you reveal God's infinite love. And if you don't do the commandments and etc., so God forgives you. Okay, that's a different thing. But the fact of the matter is, you want to be good. It's like, somebody comes out and they want to be an Olympic, perform in the Olympics, but they didn't do any. The guy didn't do anything. Didn't work out. Didn't have anything. Too strict. I don't want to work on myself. So everybody has mercy on him. The poor guy. Let him run with everybody else. So he runs. He comes on everybody runs the 100-yard dash in 9 seconds, and he takes like half an hour. So okay, but now you don't do the Torah and the commandments, God will have mercy on you. He'll let you go by. And even you'll do one good deed and you'll go to heaven, who knows? But that's not the whole reason why we're here. We're here to do it properly. We're here to do it properly. What's doing it properly? God is very, very strict. The commandments, the laws of the Torah are very, very exact. And that is compared to the olives. The olives are very bitter. And in order to take out the godliness from them, you have to crush them yourself. That's called dinim in regarding to the inside. Just like the hairs of the dikna, they are tekifim and kashim. It says that the 13 attributes of God's mercy, that comes from the beard. The beard is hairs. The hairs are very, very contracted, very little godliness revealed there. But nevertheless, through that comes the biggest mercy of all. So it is the laws of the Torah. They're very, very strict. And that's like these hairs. And also from the Erech Anpin, the same thing. But in order to draw down this level of the oil, it's by means the person, first of all, he has to be bitter. Bitter in his soul. From the darkness and the concealment of the world. A person can say, who needs the Torah mitzvah to have a good time in the world? I'll just do what I want to in the world. It says you jumped from contraction into even worse. The world is even more contraction. And this is even worse because you enjoy the contraction. You enjoy the darkness. That's worse than the Torah and the commandments, which is just a very small, terribly small amount of light. But the world is totally dark. So that's what it says. In order to get out of the world and reveal the good which is in the Torah of mitzvahs, you have to be bitter. Marirus banafshu, from the darkness which conceals, which comes from all these garments that God put on, and he conceals himself, and also even the garments of the Torah and the commandments. Then, by means of this, afterwards, you can get a tremendous revelation. This is the idea of Aaron. This is the oil, the good oil of a chachma, the godliness. It's our only chance. Ha-chachma tichiyeh will enliven the whole entire world. That comes from this level of tzomeach, right? The olive itself is a very small amount of life, like a plant compared to a man. But by means of this, by means of crushing it, by means of crushing yourself, and crushing yourself doesn't mean that you have to be miserable all the time. It certainly doesn't mean that you have to fast and you have to mortify yourself and put on barbed wire undershirts or whatever. No, it means that you have to just break your heart. Break your heart. You have to say, wow, I can't trust myself. Right? And because I do think I can trust myself and I'm the king of the universe, that's why I get angry and I get depressed and I get this and I get all confused. So I have to stop relying on myself so much. I have to break my heart. That's why King David said, I'm a worm, I'm not a man. And by means of this, then a person starts to receive, right, new inspirations, the motivation. Because now we can understand what it says. Ki tishma b'kol. You can listen in the voice. The penimis amalubash b'kol Torah. This is what's inside of the Torah. So what does the Rebbe want to say? The love of Abraham is like prayer. You go up to God. Everything is good. The idea of Aaron, though, is to bring godliness into the world. And in order to do this, only through Torah and the commandments. And also, it's a very, very great contraction of godliness, but it is godliness to bring into the world. In order to appreciate this, it has to be done with a whole heart. And it says there's nothing more wholehearted than a broken heart. Nothing more complete than a broken heart. And that's what it means. This bitterness, that's the vessel of Aaron. And like I say, this bitterness has to be like, that doesn't contradict the fact that you have to be happy and joyous and serving Hashem, positive and helping people and being making other people happy. But on the other hand, the underlying thing is we can't continue this way without Moshiach, without revelation of the world, and it all depends on me to make it happen. That's Aaron, bringing godliness into the world. Good. Now we'll learn a Yom Yom. Beautiful, beautiful. I think it's beautiful. Boker Tov. Now let us learn